Hi, welcome back to my BookTube channel. This video today is my April wrap-up video. I'm going to tell you about the books that I've read in April and what I thought of them. And I also completed the O.W.L.S Magical Readathon in April. And somebody is a little bit smug about having completed the O.W.L.S. And in case you haven't realised, I am Ravenclaw, and in true Ravenclaw style, I didn't just complete my required O.W.L.S for my chosen career, I actually went on and completed every single O.W.L. So yay me! Actually, in April I read 23 books, and that is just incredible, to be honest. I was struggling a little bit at times with everything that's going on, getting a little bit distracted, losing a bit of concentration, and also with homeschooling I'm getting mithered constantly. But I think in the end I had a really fantastic month. Just a few little stats for you. I rated 6 books 5 stars, and I rated 9 books 4 stars, so that's just incredible, really. 6 books 3 stars, 0 2 stars, and 2 1 stars. So I'm going to tell you about the 5 stars first and then work my way down. And I think I'm going to actually take these off because I don't wear glasses normally and they were feeling a bit funny. Right, so I read Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. This is the sequel to Carry On. I'm sure many of you have heard about it, and it's quite coincidental that I've read this during my O.W.L.S because it's sort of classed as like an adult version of Harry Potter, and I loved Carry On, absolutely. I went into it thinking it was going to be 3 stars. It was 5 stars, absolutely adored it. And I just was desperately hoping that Wayward Son would carry on like that. And it really is fantastic. I flew through this. Such a great book. And then, keeping with that theme, I read Nevermore. Now, this is middle grade. And I did rate this 5 stars. I had a little difficulty initially rating it because as an adult, when I read adult books and rate them 5 stars, it's very different to reading a children's book and having to rate that. So what I kind of did was think back to when I was the age that this is aimed at, what would I have thought about this book? You know, was it well written? Was it interesting? Was the characters, you know, likeable? And I did. I absolutely loved this. And I did rate it 5 stars. So basically, Morrigan Crow is a cursed child, and she's destined or fated to die at midnight on her 11th birthday. But when that time comes, she's magically like whisked away to this alternate world where people have these special gifts and they can do things such as read minds or influence people's minds, things like that. And there's dragons and witches and all that kind of good stuff. And it really is a wonderful, magical book for children. I'm definitely going to be passing this on to my son, who's 10. I think he'll just absolutely love it. And then, now I read Scythe, I think it was February, and Thunderhead in March, and then in April I read The Toll. This is the Arc of a Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. Absolutely incredible YA dystopian series. Basically, they live in a world where death has been conquered. Nobody dies accidentally. Nobody becomes ill and dies. So they have this society of scythes who their job is to select people and kill them to control population. And it kind of starts off with 2 young people who get chosen to be scythe apprentices, and then we kind of follow their journey through that world and all the kind of corrupt stuff that's going on and how they're trying to fix things and get back to how it should be, where scythes are kind of not celebrities and they're not enjoying killing. It's more of a respectful career. And it's just absolutely brilliant. I've heard some people say that they were a little disappointed with the toll and the way the series ended, but I absolutely loved it the whole way through. Could not fault it. Literally, they look like quite chunky books, but you just fly through these. And this set, I actually read the series on ebook, but I put this box set onto my Amazon wish list, and then randomly I just happened to be checking for something else and spotted that this set had dropped down from over £30 to £9.95 with free delivery. I have no idea why, but I jumped on that, and within a couple of days this was delivered. So that is going to sit prettily on my shelves of the books that are keepers. And the only arc that I rated 5 stars this month was The Serial Killer's Daughter by L.A. Detweiler. Now, this is a thriller, but it's not just like any other thriller. It's told, I would say, from the villain's point of view. So basically we follow Ruby, who's a little girl from the ages of 6 to, I think, 17-ish. And it is written in diary format, so it is this girl's diary entries as she's growing up, and she discovers that her dad plays what she calls a killing game. And initially, as a young girl, she sees it more as a game. She doesn't realise that it's murder, and she becomes quite fixated on it. Now, Ruby does seem to be neuroatypical. She's got a lot of obsessive tendencies. She's quite strict and rigid with a routine, lots of concrete thinking, quite socially awkward. So that kind of helps us to understand why she views things slightly differently than you would expect her to. So she starts to kind of glorify murder, basically. She sees the act as opposed to the outcome. And as she's growing up with this as part of her sort of normal life, that her father is a serial killer. So as she's getting to more teenage years, she's not reacting how we would expect teenagers to react. And it's very, very gruesome. There's a lot of violence, a lot of graphic descriptions. Ruby's also very, very badly bullied throughout the book at school, and that is a little distressing at times, and there's definitely a trigger warning for that there. It's quite horrendous, the bullying. And then there's definitely trigger warnings for suicide, self-harm, murder. And there's also like this kind of side mystery as to what happened to Ruby's mum. Now, Ruby's mum passed away when she was, I think it was 2 years old. She was quite young, so she never really knew her mum. And the story's always been that her mum committed suicide, and Ruby's trying to figure out as she grows up if it is suicide or if something dodgy went on. And it just really is. I found it a fantastic book. It was really refreshing to see something different on the thriller scene. It's just something I've not read before. And then I read We Should All Be Feminists, and I'm gonna have to read this name, and I'm very sorry if I butcher it. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Sorry. This is, I would say it's more of an essay as opposed to a book, really, but it's absolutely incredible. This lady has written about how sexism and kind of gender politics work throughout the world, and she talks about discrimination in various situations. She draws upon her own experiences quite a bit. There are some humorous times in it, but then there's obviously some quite some things that kind of make you a little angry, like on behalf of women out there. She points out that not all sexism and discrimination is obvious. She talks quite a bit about the kind of under the radar, institutionalized type of things where people don't actually realize that they're being discriminatory just because that's how things have always been. and they don't kind of take that time to step back and think really what they're doing. They just do what's always happened. And that is just a fantastic essay on how we can all kind of be a little more aware of what we are saying and doing. And then I listened to I Heart My Little A-Holes by Karen Alpert. Now, she is a blogger and I think she's US based. She runs a blog called Baby Sideburns. Prior to this book, I'd never actually heard of her at all, but I just thought it sounded quite fun, and I had a listen and I absolutely loved it. Like, I was crying, like just tears streaming down with laughter at times. It's full of loads of little anecdotes and stories that I'm absolutely sure that most mums out there would be able to relate to. It's hilarious. However, as you can tell from the title, she does sometimes say that her kids do her head in, that the a-holes, that the they're winding her up. So if that is something that you're not keen on, then just stay away from this book. But if you are somebody that enjoys, the kind of realities of parenting and can be honest about how they sometimes make you feel, then this is definitely a book for you. It really is a funny book. And I read a book called Once a Girl, Always a Boy by Jo Avesta. This is like a family memoir of a transgender journey. And basically, Jo Avesta is the mum in the family, and she writes quite a few of the chapters, but then other members of the family, they all kind of join in, including Jeremy, who the story is about. He was born as a little girl, and he was called Emily. And then he kind of struggled a lot with his gender identity. He thought he was a tomboy, and that's what everyone kind of put it all down to, the fact that he wanted to wear boys' clothes and he wanted to play with the boys and do boys' activities. But then as he grew up, he came across all these like kind of difficult situations whereby, because he was a girl, at a certain age he then isn't allowed to play on boys' sports teams, and also other parents of his male friends then became uncomfortable with him kind of hanging out at their house because he's a girl and the child is a boy. And so he kind of lost his entire friendship group at one point. And then obviously there's all the difficulties as he gets older and he struggles with his gender identity a little more, and he's trying to discover who he really is and what he should do with his life. And it really is it is eye-opening, to be honest. I personally do not know anybody who's transgender, so for me this was like quite a new thing for me to understand about. Prior to this book I would have kind of guessed at some basics and I would have known some things, but there's lots that goes on that I wouldn't even think about. And I think what was really interesting is that we don't just see Jeremy's point of view in things as he's growing up and he's struggling to deal with things. We also see the kind of effects that it has on his family members. He's got brothers and a sister, and his dad and his grandma and people like that. So it's quite interesting to see how they perceived things at the time and what they were thinking. And when he is an adult, him and his family, especially his mum, they kind of do a lot of campaigning for transgender rights. They get involved in the political scene, and I was learning things that is just, I'm completely gobsmacked about, to be honest. Things like that a bill was passed in Texas that made it so that transgender people can't use public toilets, or else they could be arrested. And I was like, what? Like, is that even legal? Like, how does that it's just beyond belief, to be honest. And also that people are allowed to discriminate against transgender and the LGBTQ community as long as it's based on their own religious beliefs. So they can say, I'm not going to offer you a job even though you are the best candidate for the job, purely because my religion thinks that homosexuality is a sin. And I was just like, whoa, mind blown. Like, is that real? You know, the world we're living in right now, like, seriously, people are still discriminating like that. I mean, it's crazy. So that's what I mean by it's eye-opening. It's not just about the person's journey, it's about, you know, the world around them kind of thing, and how other people view them and perceive them. And it was very interesting, but it was also quite difficult to read, because you just really felt for the family and for Jeremy, and people should not be going through this. And then we have Overdose by Benjamin Perrin. Now this is non-fiction, and it kind of tells the story of the opioid crisis in Canada. Now, this was another book that had me completely gobsmacked. It's full of facts and figures, but it's not dry. So to me, I would say that's accessible, as in most people would find this an easy, interesting book to read. What got me the most, that I was quite shocked about, is that the opioid crisis in Canada caused more deaths in 1 year than the Korea and the Afghanistan conflicts combined. I mean, that is just crazy. And then the stories that the emergency service workers who are attending these scenes, you know, they're becoming so traumatized by this onslaught of never-ending overdoses and horrible deaths, that they themselves are then suffering from, well, at the very least, they're suffering from PTSD, and some of them are even going on to take their own lives because they're that traumatized by things that have happened. And for me, I'm just shocked that such a big thing can be impacting a country so badly, yet nobody seems to know about it. Like, this is the first that I'd heard of this opioid crisis in Canada, but surely you would think, with numbers like that and facts like that, it's something that we should all know about, and we should all be, you know, trying to figure out a solution to. And the book kind of goes through various like sections where we start off with what actually is the drug that these people are taking. Well, that's fentanyl, and it talks about what fentanyl is, how it's produced, the history of it, that kind of thing. And then it goes through who are the kinds of people that are affected, and it's not just obviously the people that take this drug, it's the families, friends, communities as well. And then we kind of move on to possible solutions, things that people have thought of that might work, things that have been tried that sort of helped, or things that didn't help. And then we get to the end where we're like, well, so what really is the solution? And spoiler alert, there isn't a solution, to be honest. It's going to be a massive battle that has to be holistic in approach. You know, all the services within the government, the community, everything, they all have to work together to, you know, try and improve this situation. So if it's something that you fancied knowing a bit more about, whether it's something that's affected your community, or if it's something that you don't know anything about like I didn't, I think this book, you would find it really interesting, and I found it fantastic. I rated it a 4-star. I think the only thing that let it down for me was the fact that quite a bit of the time the author repeated certain points. So somebody he interviewed might make a point, and then the author would then reiterate it for a few pages. So I think it could have been cut down a little bit, but it's still a great read. And I also read Mummy Needs Help by Susan Edmunds. This is just quite a fun chick lit type of thing that I would say that lots of mums could relate to. We basically follow Renee and Nick from pregnancy all the way through to the daughter's first birthday, and we get to see Renee's side of things and also Nick's, and I thought it was quite fun at times, but also at times it was quite sad. She does touch a little on postnatal depression, but I think if it's something that you have really strong feelings about, or that you have experienced and really struggled with, then I would say not to read this book, just because for me it felt a little like it downplayed postnatal depression, as in, you know, it's not that big of a deal. You just go to your doctors, pop a few pills, you feel fine within a few days. And that's not the case at all for the vast majority of people. So that's just one trigger warning. But if it's not something that affects you, then this is quite an easy, fun book to read. And it just talks about how new parents come across all these crazy situations that you're suddenly expected to deal with, and you've got this baby that completely relies on you for everything, and you've no clue what's going on, and sleep deprivation is just slowly killing you off. But yeah, it is a good book. It's just that little thing let it down for me. And I listened to the audiobook of erotic stories for Punjabi widows. I'm not even going to try and pronounce this author's name because I know I'll just wreck it. So I kind of thought this might be an average book. I wasn't sure if it would be something that I would enjoy, but I did. It was just fun. It was really fun. And there was times when I was laughing, and you know, it's just interesting because it's a different take, basically because it's all based within the Punjabi community, and this is a community that I don't have any relations with at all. So for me, this kind of, even though it's fiction, you do see a little bit of an insider kind of thing, and it was just quite fun. Nikki takes on a teaching job. She thinks she has gone to teach creative writing. However, when she meets her students, she realises that they just can't read or write at all. They actually need to start with the basics of the alphabet, never mind creative writing. And somehow the students in the class kind of convince her to allow them to write these erotic stories. And obviously that's not viewed very well within the community, and it's just like a kind of just a fun story about these widows finding the way to express themselves and a way to keep themselves going when, you know, they've lost their husbands. And yeah, I rated that 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And one book that I was incredibly excited to read this month was Until the End of the World by Sarah Lyons Fleming. Now, my excitement on this was based purely on that this series was rated amongst the top 3 zombie series within the zombie fiction community. So I was thinking, you know, I absolutely love zombies, and if this is so highly rated, it will be amazing. And unfortunately, I don't know, it just didn't quite hit the 5-star mark. I'm not sure if, because obviously I only read the first book, I'm wondering if once I've got to the end of the whole series that I'll feel differently about it, you know, that things develop over time. But it was good. We kind of follow a group of young adults who find themselves within the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and they have to try and get out of the city. One of them knows where there's like a safe community where they can go and live, and they're just basically trying to get there, and it's about the people they meet along the way, obviously the zombies they have to deal with. Now, what I will say is this is a very gentle introduction to the zombie fiction genre. It's not really about the zombies, and there's not much like kind of gory stuff going on. It's more about the characters and the kind of plot, as in the travelling to this safe place, rather than about the zombies. So if it's something you fancy trying, then this would be a good introductory book to that genre. And I read The Hunting Party by Lucy Fowler. Now, this is one of those thrillers that I would say is a slow burn. It like a group of friends head up to like a really remote Scottish lodge for New Year's, and right from the beginning, the story goes on 2 timelines. So right from the beginning, we see that the staff at the lodge have discovered a dead body, and then we are taken back on the other timeline to when the friends are travelling up to the lodge, and you know, and they're arriving and all that kind of thing. So we keep kind of flitting in and out of this timeline where there's already a body and the staff are trying to figure out what's going on, to the other timeline of where the friends are just arriving at the lodge and getting settled in and things like that. And as the story progresses, these friends find out hidden secrets about each other that have been kept long buried, and that obviously, because it's a thriller, we know these aren't nice secrets. So, you know, there's things going on, and then that kind of makes you think, oh, well, maybe they killed that person, and we don't know who the body is right until the end. So you kind of think, oh, well, maybe they get killed, and maybe they killed them because of this. And then you'd read the next bit and you'd be like, oh, actually, no, maybe they killed them. And so it did keep my mind going like that. But it's definitely one of those where I would say like 85% of the book was the build up, and then we just had wham bam, thank you ma'am, right at the end. I did really enjoy it, but you have to be in it for the long haul with that book. And then I read one last arc that I want to tell you about, and that is The Apartment by K.L. Slater. I'm not sure if I am the odd one out here. I have seen plenty of people loving this book, but for me it just didn't quite hit it. I rated it 3 stars. It's a thriller based on a woman and her young daughter. The daughter is 6. They have to sell their home and move out, and they're trying to find somewhere else to live in London on a budget, and they get offered this apartment that's near Kensington Palace, and they get offered it at really, really cheap rates. And so they move in, and it's just very odd. There's some other really odd kind of residents who live there as well in the other apartments, and the owners of the apartment are quite odd people. So all these weird little things start happening, that the things like furniture being moved or a toy being moved, the sound of voices in the walls, things like that. And the woman is not sure if she's starting to imagine these things, if her mental health is suffering due to, you know, the stress of moving, and she'd lost her husband just before the move, things like that. And again, this is another slow burn. I think what lowered the star rating for me is that I think I'd got to 85% or round about that mark in the book before anything happened. Obviously there's these little odd things every so often, but they're not really action. It was kind of like nothing happened for a very long time. Then we had a big thing at the end, and it all kind of happened really quickly and was over really quickly and was a bit unrealistic. What was interesting was that it was all based on a very famous psychology experiment. Now, I'll not tell you about which one because that would be a spoiler, but it's based on this psychology experiment, and we get to see diary entries from the doctor who originally conducted the experiment, and then you kind of start figuring out how that relates to the current day story. But just for me, I think there wasn't enough in this book to keep me entertained. It was a little bit of a drag for me to get through. And so that was all the arcs that I'd read this month. I'm not going to go on and on about all the other books that I read because, to be honest, the ones that are 3 star and 1 star I didn't massively enjoy, so I've not got much to say about them. And I'm aware that with 23 books in a month, a wrap-up video can be quite long. So I read Roll With It by Jamie Sumner. Now this is middle grade, and I rated that 4 stars. It's just cute, and if that's your kind of thing, go with it. And then Confessions of a Male Nurse by Michael Alexander. This is just a memoir from a bloke who was nursing over in New Zealand and London at various times, and it's just some of the funny case studies that he patients that he worked with. I rated that 4 stars as well. I listened to a book called In at the Deep End by Kate Davis, and I rated this 4-star. It's it's weird. It's basically about this woman's kind of introduction into being a lesbian, but I would imagine that it's quite extreme. She ends up getting involved in sex parties and bondage and all sorts. It's quite funny. It's written in a very entertaining way, and I've no idea if this is fiction or memoir or what, but yeah, it was just a fun book to listen to. And I listened to a couple of kind of like chick lit type things, and it was The Accidental Life Swap by Jennifer Joyce, and I rated that 3 stars. And then I read The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa and rated that 3 stars as well. I listened to With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, possibly. That is YA. That was 3 stars, but I know other people have rated that quite highly. Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Cheng Tom. This again is to do with transgender people. It just wasn't my thing. It's quite a little bit fantasy based, and I just didn't quite get it. But again, 3 stars. And then one of the books that I've had on my TBR for quite a while is The Water Cure. That was a 3-star for me. It was very odd. I couldn't connect with any of the characters, but it reminds me a little bit of The Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, in that because the character is supposed to be quite unemotional and very clinical, the book is written that way and feels that way, and this is the same way. It's dystopian, and apparently the whole world beyond this island is poisonous, so this husband and wife keep their 3 daughters isolated on this island, and it was just bizarre. I don't know. Just to go and have a read about this for yourself, because I don't know what to say about it. It was just odd. And I listened to Love Her or Lose Her, which is part of the Hot and Hammered series by Tessa Bailey. Again, I've heard that people really enjoy these, but it just wasn't my thing at all. It was a 1 star. I really hated the characters in the book with a passion. And then the last one was The Heart and Other Viscera, and that is by Felix J. Palmer. This I didn't get at all. It just went over my head. I couldn't even tell you the genre. It was just very odd, kind of. I'm not sure if it was magical realism, but yeah, I just didn't get it, and I didn't enjoy it at all. So I think that's all the books that I read in April. Right, and then just to tell you which books I used for which subject in the O.W.L.S. So, the first subject was arithmancy, and that was to read a book that is outside your favourite genre. Now, my favourite genre is horror or maybe even sci-fi. So for that, I used Overdose by Benjamin Perrin. And then the next subject that I completed was Charms. And for that we had to read a book with a white cover. So I used Confessions of a Male Nurse by Michael Alexander. And then the next subject was Defence Against the Dark Arts. And for that subject we had to read a book that was either set at sea or at the coast. And for that I used The Water Cure by Sophie Mackintosh. Then the next subject I completed was Herbology. And for that one we needed to read a book where the title starts with M, so I used Mummy Needs Help. And the next subject I completed was the History of Magic. And for that subject we needed to read a book that featured witches and wizards. So I used Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. And for Muggle Studies, we had to read a contemporary. So for that one I read The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. For potions, we had to read a book under 150 pages, so for that I read We Are Feminists. And the last subject that I had to complete for my O.W.L.S was Transfiguration, and for that prompt we had to read a book that involved shapeshifting. Now, I read Wayward Son for this, and I am definitely stretching the prompt there. There wasn't really any transformation, but one of the characters is a vampire, so I am going to use that because I can. And for the extra subjects that I completed, the first one was Ancient Runes, and for that subject we had to read a book with a heart on the cover, so I read The Heart and Other Viscera. And for astronomy, we had to read a book where the majority of the book that we read had to be read whilst it was dark outside, so for that I chose to use the Toll. And for the Care of Magical Creatures subject, we had to read a book that had a creature with a beak on the cover, and for that I used the Accidental Life Swap because there is a really teeny tiny bird on the cover. And the very last subject that we had to complete was divination, and for this one we had to use a random number generator to choose a book from our TBR. I cheated a little bit. I basically kind of put all the books that I still wanted to read for the month in a line, and then I think I had about 5 of them, and I just put 1 to 5 in the number generator, and then it chose one of the books that I was already planning on reading. But I think it works, so I'm sticking with it. And that is all the subjects completed, with the ones that I had to and the extras that I chose to complete. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. It really is appreciated. And I hope that everyone is staying safe, and I'll see you all soon with another video. Bye.